Okay, let's talk about what the left and the right, the socialist, Marxist, and other statist organizations won't tell you during a debate. The Industrial Revolution, although it was really one really long, undivided industrial process, it often split into two parts by historians, the first and the second revolution. The first revolution began in the 18th century, roughly between 1760 and the 1780s, with the advent of the factory, the invention of the spinning jenny for the mass production of yarn, the improvement of the steam engine, and the development of advanced methods of working iron and other metals. Smokestacks began to sprout from every city skyline, and the masses of people abandoned the farms in large numbers and went to live near the factories. The revolution engendered specialization. People, even planters and farmers, became specialists. Before the Industrial Revolution, a man might say, "I am a farmer," and it was understood to mean that he produced most of the things he and his family needed. After the Industrial Revolution, a man would say, "I am a tobacco farmer," or "I am a cotton farmer." His land was given over to specialization, and he took the money that he earned from his cash crop to the store to buy the things that he needed to survive. If you want to know how to live without electrical handcuffs and chains, you have to have the vision of what it was like when men and women were free. Just as in ancient Rome, people moved in massive numbers from the farms to the cities. And as people became specialized cogs in the urban machine, they almost instantly began to lose their survival skills and sense. The wisdom of thousands of years of off-grid living began to atrophy almost immediately. The second Industrial Revolution began in the middle of the 19th century as advancements in rail travel and transport accelerated. From here we see the rise of the megacities, and more people would begin to leave home looking for the fabled and mythological good life and the riches of the city. The Second Industrial Revolution saw major advances in chemistry, such as the refinement of petroleum products, which preceded and laid the groundwork for the oil-centered economy. The invention of the means of mass communication and advertising, and the invention of mass production of the means of rapid transit. And if you weren't willing to go to the city, don't worry. All of the new technologies would soon bring the city to you. The advertisers would tell you what to buy, and the magazines and newspapers would show you what areas of the good life you were missing. Towards the end of the Second Industrial Revolution came the wide-scale use of machines replacing workers in those industries, and of course, just in time, we would begin to see the electrification and even the most rural areas. Electrification, marketed by the world's prophets as the great equalizer of men, has made slaves of virtually all men equally. By the late 1700s and the 1930s, the rich had become richer and the poor had become poorer. More people had become landless, unskilled laborers, lost in the vast ghettos of the big cities. Left-wing socialist, Marxist, and other statist organizations were formed to protest the inequalities of the system that had promised them equal access to wealth and comfort. Labor unions rose up everywhere, supposedly to protect these landless laborers from exploitation by the prophets and kings of industrialism. Right-wing statists rose up to defend the industrialists and the bankers, to bring them under the sway of the more reactionary arms of the government. Thus, we have the modern political dialect where leftists and rightists fight one another for the right to plunder the poor and the middle class. Even today, the lie that the Industrial Revolution created or expanded the middle class and broke the power of the landed and the elite is still considered to be unquestionable gospel. Wikipedia on its Industrial Revolution page under social effects says this: in terms of social structure, the Industrial Revolution witnessed the triumph of a middle class of industrialists and businessmen over a landed class of nobility and gentry. That statement is so absurd that I really cannot believe that anyone would seriously believe it. This myth is the big lie still repeated in classrooms all over the world every day. While it is true that the Industrial Revolution witnessed the triumph of the industrialists and businessmen over the landed class, it is not true that the industrialists and businessmen were middle class. While those in the landed class were the nobility and gentry, the industrialists and businessmen were the very European bankers and secret society aristocrats who had so enslaved all of the old world. According to the virtually every honest history book of the middle 18th century, which just preceded the Industrial Revolution, the vast middle class of Americans prior to the Industrial Revolution were landed. If industrialization and electrification was the victory of the middle class, where did they end up and where did all their land go? Who were these millions of poor factory workers swarming into the bulging cities of the industrial world? And where did they come from? The Industrial Revolution destroyed the landed middle class, shifted millions of people from the country to the cities, and made mind-numbing consumers out of all of them. All of the while making billionaires of the already wealthy bankers, businessmen, and industrialists. The fact that the bankers, businessmen, and industrialists were financed and supported by the old money classes of Europe is established fact. Even the land went to the industrial farmers who were and are just corporate country businessmen, fully owned and operated by the banks and the food merchants and conglomerates. The Industrial Revolution and rural electrification in America brought about the largest transfer of real wealth from the lower and middle classes to the wealthy elite in the upper class in the history of the world. The communists and fascists won't tell you that. No political power will ever tell you that, because none of these status groups want you to know that real wealth lies in the private and individual ownership of land, cattle, and the means and ability to raise crops for sustenance. All right, that's it for now. Comment if you agree or disagree with these points and we can start a dialogue. And hit the like button if you want to see more of these videos. And remember, a simple life is a beautiful life.